Well, Marvel Zombies is coming out soon as the newest Disney Plus original series. There was a time not that long ago where I'd be jumping out of my chair in excitement at that news in manic anticipation. Marvel Zombies by Robert Kirkman is one of my favorite out-of-continuity Marvel series of all time. He took the idea introduced by Mark Millar in Ultimate Fantastic Four and figured out how to make what could have been an uninspired cash grab spin-off into one of the funnest and most interesting comic series of the modern-ish era. But sadly, today is not a time not that long ago. It's fucking today. And I am definitely not jumping out of my chair. I'm sitting here in a depressed daze staring at the fact that if I want to watch some new content related to the MCU this month, this generic-looking, uninspired sludge is what Disney has felt generous enough to lazily hand me. Now, there may be some of you out there who are excited for this show. But more likely, you didn't even know they were making a Marvel Zombies show. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing more work to advertise these things than friggin' Disney bothers to. And you very well may be saying, Marvel and zombies? Bro, that sounds pretty cool. Why you hating, dog? Well, if you do have some hope for this show, let me break down 4 of the biggest red flags I see that it's going to be yet another forgettable waste of the IP Disney Plus original slop that if they would have just done a little more work, could have been something fucking awesome and unique that would have brought a lot of lapsed fans back to at least taking a peek at what's going on in the MCU. And the first red flag that immediately goes up is an adaptation not even remotely based on the comics. Again. Back in the day, though MCU movies would take massive liberties with their stories, you could still tell that the people making them had at least glanced through the comics. The basic origin of Tony Stark and Captain America were fairly close to the major beats of those comics. The Avengers all came together to fight against Loki. Movies like Winter Soldier, Doctor Strange, Civil War, Ant-Man, and others, though original stories with drastic changes, were very clearly inspired from the comics, with scenes and characters recreated right out of them. The MCU was always its own thing, but it was a thing that had its roots deep within the comics these movies and characters were based on, and people have loved for friggin' generations. Somewhere down the line, though, the MCU started huffing its own shit and decided it didn't need to read the comics anymore, and we started getting projects like Shang-Chi, Eternals, Multiverse of Madness, Quantumania, Love and Thunder, The Marvels, Echo, Ironheart, and probably the worst offender, Secret Invasion, that would just take the name of a comic character or storyline, not even bother to read it, and just make up a completely original and usually much shittier story or character of their own to wear that name like a skin suit. And this isn't some whiny fan assumption I'm doing here. There are whole compilation videos of the people making these modern MCU projects not only telling us that they've never read the comics they're adapting, but that they are specifically instructed by Kevin Feige himself not to. If you're wondering why there's been such a decline in these projects, that's one of the main reasons. And with Marvel Zombies, it's no different. What makes the original Marvel Zombies comic so unique and fun? It's that the zombies are the main characters, not the human survivors. The Marvel Zombies universe was introduced in Ultimate Fantastic Four, where a younger Reed Richards in another universe was making multiversal contact with what initially appeared to be our main universe 616 version of Reed Richards, but was soon after revealed to be a zombified Reed Richards from an apocalyptic world where most of the heroes of the universe had been turned into flesh-eating zombies, with Zombie Reed running to escape to a new world full of living humans to consume. This was a pretty kick-ass idea, and some of the details of it make it even more interesting. And the people in charge back then liked to capitalize on good ideas, so they hired The Walking Dead's Robert Kirkman to write a spin-off comic exploring this universe. The original comic is mostly told through the eyes of the Ultimate Fantastic Four and a few survivors on that world, including Magneto. And initially upon being hired, Kirkman started developing what most writers would think of for this story. A basic zombie survival story about the people left on this world trying to survive in a zombie world, but with superpowers. He very immediately realized that idea was the boringest shit ever and came up with a much better idea for the series. What if the zombies were the main characters? After realizing this was the direction to go, he really started to explore what it would be like to follow our classic, heroic Marvel heroes we know incredibly well if they were all consumed by an all-encompassing need to eat human flesh. It had already been established that these zombies retain their intelligence and personality when they return. So watching heroic characters like Spider-Man, Captain, in this universe, Colonel, America, and Iron Man adapt to this new urge they found themselves unable to resist in a world that had basically already been consumed of all life, the same personalities, the same basic ideals, but their minds completely driven by a need to feed. We got to see what heroes acclimated to this new life a little too fast, and which ones tried to hold on to what little remained of their humanity. We got to see them suffer as the monsters they'd become, or try to justify their new cravings and lot in life. It's one of the most fascinating crossroads between sheer nihilistic horror in superheroes that I've ever seen, making it one of the most unique comics Marvel's ever published. And with its cool raw style of the interiors and the fucked up recreations of classic Marvel Comics covers on the outside, it gave it such a dirty and gritty feeling that really makes you feel like you're stuck in this crapsack universe with all of them. Meanwhile, the show is literally none of that. It's that original boring idea Kirkman decided not to do, without even the elements that would have made it interesting if he had. It's about the survivors of a world overrun by zombie superheroes. In the comics, the zombies are intelligent, and due to the sheer power of superheroes, the majority of regular people had been completely devoured already, while only the stronger heroes had, quote, survived to become zombies. In the show, it's just a generic hordes of zombies roaming around everywhere, and they've lost their ability to think in the basic zombie way, making them not only much easier to deal with, but much, much boringer. Don't get me wrong here, I'm not dissing zombies, I love them. The Of the Dead movies by Romero are some of the greatest films I've ever seen, but I'll be shocked if this show is even trying to come anywhere close to that level of quality. And yeah, sure, it's pretty interesting to see characters struggle against a zombie that has superpowers. But I've seen that like 100 times in Left 4 Dead already. There's just nothing new here in this show. Now, I don't think a straight adaptation of the comics would have been the right call either. But I'd have loved to see the basic idea of those comics shifted specifically for the heroes of the MCU. I'd love to think that we're following this Steve Rogers or Tony Stark as a zombie grappling with their new mission in life. But no. Most of those guys, the iconic characters we all love, aren't characters in this show. They're just mindless zombies wandering around in a whole horde of them, so you can be like, oh, look, a zombie of a superhero I know, wow. Now, if this had been an original idea created in What If, sure, I'd be interested to see it explored more, but it's not. It was a comic they were poorly ripping off, continued into a spin-off series for virtually no reason besides needing more content to shit out onto their platform. And since we aren't even watching the most popular MCU heroes try and survive in a post-apocalyptic world, instead we're getting what I will call Red Flag 2. This show has got to be the most Phase 4 and Phase 5 cast of all time. Imagine you hadn't quite been keeping up with the MCU. You never watched What If, and you aren't that familiar with most of the less popular characters introduced after Endgame. I mean, there's a good chance you don't have to imagine, but roll with me. You somehow come across an ad for something called Marvel Zombies. A pretty striking, crazy name, right, bro? You get the gist that it's about a zombie apocalypse in the MCU, and you think, it sounds pretty cool. Let me give it a watch. You pop it on with all your preconceptions of what an MCU is, and then you get to see this. What? Who the fuck are these people? I thought this was a Marvel thing. Maybe you kind of remember Shang-Chi and you loosely remember some blonde Black Widow chick, but this is something totally different from what you fell in love with about the MCU. How long do you bother to watch before you just turn it off and feel that you were right to stop engaging with the MCU brand altogether? This has been a problem all across Phases 4 and 5. Like thinking they didn't need to read the comics, the MCU thought that they could keep the whole thing going with a bunch of made-up new characters, replacing Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, or Natasha Romanoff, or replacing the level of importance in the universe of characters like Clint Barton, Bruce Banner, Stephen Strange, and others, with these hip, new, socially relevant characters. Of course, a few of these new characters have been good, but come on, they're not even remotely close to the level of popularity of the OG Avengers, and we all know it. You cannot build a franchise on the back of any of these guys. One of What If's main problems was that after a bit, it started to focus way too much on these new characters, as if it could gaslight audiences into thinking that these new kids were the MCU now. That they could replace all of those aging originals as the next generation to keep going for another 5 decades, but fans have not embraced them, like, at all. We already saw what a movie starring all Phase 4 and 5 characters would be like with Thunderbolts, and though I liked it quite a bit, no one bothered to see this movie because these characters and the projects they're in are just not popular. An MCU with zombies gimmick show is only going to be fun if you get to see characters you love thrust into a horrific zombie world. You get to see them outside of their element and stretched to their limits. We got a bit of this in that What If episode, but most of the well-known characters are dead by now. The characters we're following for this show are already pretty obscure by MCU standards, and now they're all dressed up in post-apocalyptic gear instead of just their costumes. Forget casual fans trying to recognize these guys. I couldn't frickin' tell you who half these characters are without looking it up, making this pretty much just look like an original cast dealing in an original zombie universe, which, you know, there's a billion of those out there. But let's take a look and see which Marvel characters are starring in this thing. Kamala Khan, a character from one of the lowest watched Disney Plus shows and one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Ironheart, from another show no one watched and most people forget was even in Black Panther 2. Kate Bishop, who, to be fair, more people did watch Hawkeye than most other Disney Plus shows, but she really hasn't been in anything for years now, so... Blade, whose movie they canned, has not been introduced in the MCU at all, and he's not any Blade you'd recognize, but some kind of Blade Moon Knight amalgamation thing, so... Alright. Melina Vostkov, Yelena Belova, and Red Guardian. One character most no one will remember from Black Widow, and two characters who were just in a movie basically no one bothered to go see. Shang-Chi, Katie, Zhu Wenwu, Death Dealer. Characters from a movie that came out like 5 years ago. That seems like it's never going to get a sequel because, I mean, some people liked it, but it's not that popular. U.S. Agent, another dude from a movie no one saw. That one guy from Ant-Man, Ant-Man's head, a Minotaur, not Valkyrie. Kamala's mom, and oh, there we go, Spider-Man. Wow, a real character. Oh, and Thor. Oh, I feel so spoiled. Does this excite you? Because if so, man, you're in the minority of people who fucking loved what they were trying to do with the MCU in phases 4 and 5. All this is missing is She-Hulk and Sam Wilson to basically be the entire roster they were trying to build the next Avengers movie out of originally before they realized just how much that would bomb and completely scrapped whatever they were going to do to focus all of the marketing for that movie on Robert Downey Jr. instead. I may give What If's art style shit, but it had a purpose. It was to give you at least half live-action looking versions of iconic popular characters without actually having to film, or sometimes even record, those incredibly famous and expensive actors. Unfortunately, What If barely took advantage of this format, and later in the series seemed more interested in creating OCs and writing Rule 34 fan fiction about Kat Dennings fucking a duck. Had they focused on the actual promise of the format more, which was giving us stories in the MCU about how things would have gone differently if these beloved heroes had made different choices in the iconic moments of the movies we love, I see no reason this show couldn't have gone on indefinitely instead of being canceled after 3 seasons of increasingly diminished viewers. And I feel the same for Marvel Zombies. Had they decided to use the title and make an original story instead of continuing the one from What If, I think they could have made something a lot of fans would have been excited about. Instead, we're getting a show about the characters people have proven that they don't even want to see in live action, showing that the writers still don't understand what it is that people want. Leading me to my next and likely most important red flag. I mean, it's written by Zeb Wells. What do we expect? I picked up the Deadpool-Batman crossover recently. The first time Marvel and DC have done a crossover since JLA Avengers in the early 2000s, written by the legendary Kurt Busiek. I didn't expect anything at that level of writing, and I was really only picking it up for the couple-page Frank Miller story in the back, but I expected some fighting, some interesting contrast between the two characters, maybe a funny line or two. But no, we got 20-some pages of Deadpool acting completely out of character while Bruce Wayne acts like a fucking dumbass. We get hilarious and thought-provoking observations from Deadpool about Batman, like his dead butler used to call him Master Bruce, so billionaires, right? And Robin's a little boy, so... you know. Oh, God. And then we get to watch Deadpool and Joker try to out-funny each other while Batman beats their nonsensical team up with a brilliant, "You know, Joker, Deadpool would make a better villain than you," that Joker somehow falls for. Basically, no fighting or action whatsoever, just characters standing around talking. The friggin' bane of modern superhero comics. No real ambition to the story, no real reason for it to exist except they're both popular characters. Just nothing. A complete waste of Greg Capullo's art and the idea as a whole. A handful of pages of Captain America Wonder Woman in the back of the comic were more imaginative, ambitious, and epic than the main story in the comic. Rocket Raccoon getting the goddamn Green Lantern ring was clever, funnier, and had more references to comic lore. Daredevil and Green Lantern just fighting goddamn ninjas was more badass, heartfelt, and passionate. Well, I should have expected this comic would be a brain-dead, creatively soulless waste of time, knowing that frackin' Zeb Wells was writing it. Now, I don't criticize specific writers on here that often. I certainly do in private life, but I don't like to target hate at specific names on this multi-thousand viewer platform I lord over. I prefer to criticize the stories themselves. But with some writers, I'll make an exception. And the guy who thought that the best way to keep Spider-Man and Mary Jane apart after the previous writer was working to get them back together after decades of editorial mismanagement was to come up with a story where Mary Jane gets stuck in some kind of alternate universe where time moves differently, finds and adopts 2 kids, and settles down randomly with some lame-looking normal guy with glasses and a beard, all off-screen of course, before returning to the regular Marvel universe, having those kids magically disappear, and then having Mary Jane stay with this fucking random guy until Spider-Man, no, I don't want to be with you, with no real insight as to why. Yeah, I'll make an exception for that kind of, quote, writer. This arc was so bad that I've seen many longtime fans who were so insulted, bored, and fed up with this kind of garbage out of comics that they finally quit collecting Spider-Man after decades of reading. And some of whom claim they will never read the character again, or have lost faith in American comics altogether. That is a legendarily bad run, man. Well, that's the dude we got writing this show. Like, every single episode, not just 1 or 2. He's written for other MCU projects too, so let's see, we got She-Hulk. Yeah, there you go. Ugh. The Marvels, as a co-writer, though uncredited, and Deadpool and Wolverine as a co-writer, which is where I'm gonna assume the whole Vanessa and Deadpool not being together fucking off-screen thing came from in the movie. One of the few parts of that thing that really annoyed me in there. And we all know that a movie like that only has a loose script anyways. Most of the dialogue is going to be improvised on the spot. He's writing every episode of this show, and nothing he's worked on in the past really makes me think he has the ability to rescue everything this show already has working against it. And an idea like Marvel Zombies, even in the comics, it's not an exceptionally good idea. It works because it had good writers working on it. You had Mark Miller, who's a legend in the industry, who was able to turn himself into a friggin' franchise of his own. Then Robert Kirkman picks up the torch, bringing his love for and understanding of both superhero and zombie universes to know where to focus the story and what fans would want to see out of it. And then they got Fred Van Lent to pick up from where he left off, and the whole thing devolved into stupid, worthless garbage. Not worth continuing reading at all. No idea is so good or bad that a good or bad writer couldn't salvage or destroy it. If this show had a good, super creative writer, I think even with a bunch of random-ass characters no one cares about and being not even remotely inspired by the comics, that this show could be surprisingly good. And I could be super into it. But giving these characters to the guy who wrote that hilarious, Abomination Retreat episode of She-Hulk, I'm still laughing, who, though he has some okay credits in the past, in the modern day cannot seem to write incredibly easy to understand characters like Spider-Man, Mary Jane, Batman, or Deadpool in character, like at all, I don't think we're going to be witnessing a miracle here. And honestly, I think Marvel knows it, leading me to my last red flag. Disney's barely bothering to advertise this thing, man. I don't know about you, but if I had a show called fucking Marvel Zombies on my app, I'd want everyone to know about it. And yet, like Izoconda last month, if I wasn't making videos, I wouldn't even know this thing friggin' existed. With all the data these corporations have harvested from us, they know exactly where we are when we go online and exactly where to advertise to us. But I think I've maybe seen like one ad for this show, and honestly, I may be misremembering that. I may have been searching for it. Disney's in a bit of a rebranding phase. With the failure of virtually every project they've released in the last half decade, they've finally started to realize that maybe they've been doing something wrong. And when it comes to Marvel, I really think Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four underperforming from what Disney expected have finally shown them that the path they've been following is going to guarantee the death of the MCU and an embarrassing box office for their next Avengers movie. I don't know that I'd say that the path they seem like they want to follow of tripling down on nostalgia bait and taking less narrative risks is going to work for them, but they're clearly trying to move away from their original plans of focusing on new legacy characters and hardcore appealing to what they imagined the kids were into nowadays, but they were incredibly mistaken on. But they're in kind of a weird position where crap they've already produced, needs to be released, but They don't want anyone to see it. Why do you think you haven't heard shit about Wonder Man yet? Why do you think you never even knew about Aizo Okanda? What advertising there is only very minimal, targeting specifically at people who are already searching for stuff like that. They've realized that they've got a bunch of crap no one asked for coming down the pipeline, and they finally realized that all these YouTubers watching their content, hate fucking it, and then making fun of it in front of their audience isn't free publicity like they thought. It's actively hurting their brand because less people are trusting in the movies being any good when they come out and are just turning to people online to tell them, yeah, it's crap like you thought it was. Thunderbolts was a good movie, and Fantastic Four was also a movie. Back in the high days of the MCU, I think both of those movies would have done pretty well. But the show's mediocre to god-awful quality has had a bigger effect on public perception of the brand than I think Disney expected in their worst nightmares. And when you look over at Marvel Zombies, I mean, it's never going to get the same level of hate as Ironheart deservedly got. But the more people who go out of their way to give it a watch, the more people who will likely not go out of their way to watch the next MCU project. If anyone behind the scenes at Disney thought they had something good here, they'd be advertising the hell out of it. But they knew what this is. Another uninspired, barely recognizable pile of content slop with the MCU logo painted on top of it. And they are obligated to crap this shit out onto their shitty crap app for shareholder numbers and behind the scenes contracts and yada yada yada. Everything except because fans wanted it. And I'm incredibly disappointed because for a show like this, I'm honestly the exact target audience. A post-apocalyptic zombie-infested horror world based on an alternate universe but with the continuity of a pre-established superhero universe? That's almost everything I like all in one sentence. And yet, I'm probably less excited to watch this than I've ever been for an MCU show. And that's saying something, man. Echo was an MCU show. Well, I think I've talked about a show no one cares about, and no one's going to watch enough for one day. Do you disagree? Think this show's going to be an awesome hit, and Zeb Wells is the Alan Moore of our generation. Dear God, I can't believe I let those words come out of my mouth. Or agree, but think I'm missing a major red flag? Let me know below. Don't care about any of this? Don't know what the hell a Marvel Zombie is, and never seen an MCU in your life? Well, I appreciate you sticking around and watching, man. Might as well follow that what I assume was a Herculean feat of patience with a click of that like, bell, and subscribe button. And while you're at it, go follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't care. Because I will say things on there, sometimes make an ass of myself. People yell at me. It's kind of funny to watch sometimes. And most importantly, are you going to watch this show? Did you even know it was coming out? See you later for my apology video when this show turns out to be one of my favorite MCU shows ever made. Toodles!